All right, we're joined now by a policy analyst and a former presidential candidate in the 2007 Nigeria's general election, Galtima Liman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
It's a pleasure. Good morning.
Right. And we also have from our Abuja studio, he's the executive director of Victim Support Fund, Rebuilding the Northeast, Sunday Ochoche. Sunday, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Now, let's start it from the studio, Galtima. You have been following this development. I remember we've had you on the show before talking about efforts to rebuild the Northeast. But give us an idea. Between that time, a year and now, a lot of things have also happened in the Northeast. How challenging would it be to develop or to bring back the Northeast to what it used to be?
Well, if you're talking about the Northeast, what it used to be, let me just recollect the times when we were in the railway terminal city of Nguru. Okay. It was, I could vividly remember when I was a young person there, a young child. You had the Grand Road Pyramid, you had the cinema houses, you had all sorts of cosmopolitan living, you know, the Igbos, the Yorubas and all this. Very, very wealthy society. I could remember my own namesake, who was the traditional ruler, Galtima. In his private palace, he used to have what you call a zoo. He had tigers, he had
If we follow that your line of argument, then it will be rebuilding the whole part of Nigeria, rebuilding the country. But can we narrow it down to before the insurgency, before the Boko Haram attack, and what we have today?
Well, moving down again, you know, I need to give a background for you to understand that yes, this rebuilding process has already a template in place. You know, the North used to be extremely very wealthy. I could remember when we were going to secondary school in Enugu, we had the Northeast line, Mercedes-Benz with the aircon that you could ride from Maiduguri, you know, sleep over in terminals in Jos, and then proceed down to this. So when we come to begin to see destitution as we've seen, internally displaced, Boko Haram, these are completely very strange, you know, developments that have baffled a lot of people. And that's why this particular program is absolutely very germane to the development process, as you talk, that covers the wider economy, because not only the Northeast, but the aggregate economy, the Nigerian economy itself has suffered debilitating difficulties here and there.
All right. Yeah, let's get to Sunday now. Sunday, you are joining us from our Abuja studio. Now, there are questions as to, we know that where there's a will, there is a way. But right now, Nigeria has been through a lot of economic challenges. How challenging would it be from that window to rebuild the Northeast now?
Thank you very much. Even under the best of circumstances, the damages that have been done in the Northeast will require the best of efforts, the most of resources. And in a situation where we are going through the economic challenges that we are in Nigeria, it only complicates the problem. When you look at different dimensions of the crisis, you have the humanitarian component. It's estimated that well over 2 million people are displaced. It is estimated that nearly all those 2 million people require food assistance. More than the people displaced, there are additional huge populations that were entrapped in the Boko Haram enclave, the so-called caliphate of Boko Haram, that also require assistance. There are a number of Nigerians that have become refugees outside the country. Then you go to the component of the physical infrastructure that has been damaged. A lot of cities are completely ravaged. You take Borno State, a city like Bama, which is the second largest city, little is standing in those places. You go to Adamawa, Madagali has been attacked and tagged severally. Mubi, no bank was standing after the attack on Mubi. You go to Askira Uba in those places in southern Borno. So every places have been ravaged. There is no electricity pole, no wire that is standing between Maiduguri and Bama, none between Maiduguri and Gambarungala. So it's enormous. The conservative estimate, by the works of the Buhari plan, which is the integrated plan for the reconstruction of the Northeast put together, is that we will require a minimum of 3 trillion naira just for the short-term intervention to make any little impact on the situation in the Northeast. And that is just only the financial component. Like I said, the humanitarian component and even the human component is difficult to quantify. When you think about the number of widows out there, the number of children out there with no parents at all, who have no idea whether the parents are alive or not, when you think about the trauma component that people, women and children have gone through, when you think about the lost opportunities in education, in an environment that historically has been educationally backward, so it is huge.
Okay, Sunday, I like the word you use. You said minimum. It's about 3 trillion naira, which is about $9 billion. And that was about a year or more than a year ago now that assessment was done. You know what the naira is now to a dollar as we speak, really. So I like the word minimum. Well, does it subsist in the Nigeria of today?
Absolutely inadequate. Absolutely inadequate, because first of all, the time those assessments were made, not every place that was damaged was accessible. So those were just assessments of the accessible places. Now many more places have become accessible, and people were in a position of evaluating better. The assessments are ongoing. They are continuous processes. So the issue is really serious, and that is why we from the Victim Support Fund and the Presidential Committee on Northeast Initiative keep emphasizing that there is no way we can rebuild the Northeast under the normal process of budget making. The process in the issue in the Northeast is an emergency one. It's a complex situation and requires very, very special intervention. It requires an emergency intervention. We need to see it for what it is, that we cannot rebuild the Northeast as a normal reconstruction or a normal development process.
All right, Galtima, let me come back to you in here. There are so many aspects of life: education, health, women, children, name it, and so on. But if this construction has to start, or revitalization, or bringing back life to the Northeast, where should really government start from?
You see, in strategy, there is one thing they call the key factor for success.
Okay.
Because over the years, strategists have come to realize that almost all projects that you are talking about, no fund is actually adequate enough to cover all the projects that human beings need. So you need to prioritize. As at the moment, the most vulnerable set of people in the Northeast are the malnourished children, women, the widows, and in the camps. So the Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative, the most important thing that we do right now is to see how they can address the immediate challenges of health, malnutrition, within the IDP camps and all that. But that you cannot do, as you could see the Deputy Chairman, unless you still have guarantee of security. Because once in a while, as you've seen in recent reportage, you see attacks still. And I could remember what my professor says. He said, when you go out to hunt for a rabbit, be prepared to meet a tiger. But this time in the Northeast, it's not only tigers that you're expecting. So when the military establishment says that, oh, we've degraded the Boko Haram, we have to be extremely very, very careful about statements like that. Because in a guerrilla warfare, as it is right now, they target the soft targets where security is a little bit lax. So there is still the need, most importantly, to stress on the presence of the military establishments in various danger zones, and make sure that you have proactive intelligence as to what is emerging, and also rapid response forces in place. So that is absolutely key, so that human beings that are within that affected areas will begin to have some kind of comfort that will say, okay, we can do best when we begin to go back to our pristine traditional communities so that we can get engaged in our normal lifestyle. And so the immediate interventions in terms of the funds that the Victim Support Fund, the Presidential Committee on they have gotten a lot of funds. Understandably, it's not adequate enough given the kind of huge aggregate problems that the country itself is facing. So, but with the little that they can have, they should address the immediate needs, the immediate priorities, dietary requirements, sanitary requirements, water, and security. These are the key elements that we can talk about, not even taking such kind of limited funds into buildings, for instance, because at the moment right now you can have some kind of improvised arrangements. Because if you say you want to reconstruct some of these damaged schools, you're talking in terms of billions of naira. And those billions of naira is what this disadvantaged people immediately need, for their own survival. So it is very, very key for us to balance between what the human creature comfort requirements of the destitutes are and what go into physical infrastructure. Much as we need those physical infrastructure, the ratio should be something 70% to what they can survive right now, and maybe 30%, and then you begin to now source for funds, development partners, within the local budgetary arrangement. And I agree with him that the Northeast requires special intervention in light of the, devastating effect of the Boko Haram insurgency. Examples have been given as to the Marshall Plan post the Second World War, when you had problems with Europe having this kind of humongous devastation that had happened. You had this American intervention in terms of Marshall Plan, where huge funds went into it with the special legal arrangements as to how those funds will be.
Let's direct that question to Sunday now. Sunday, our guest in the studio said the issue of food security, the issue of malnutrition should be key in terms of rebuilding the North. And you said earlier that what we have will not even be enough. And as you're aware, 45 billion naira has been earmarked for rebuilding the Northeast in the appropriation bill for 2017. What's your take on that?
Thank you very much. The situation we have in the Northeast, again, it's where the needs are so many, and ordinarily you want to prioritize. But you have a situation where every need is a priority. And determining what should be done immediately and what should be led for the medium to the long term is itself a challenge. Yes, there is the issue of food security, etc. The first thing is, under the circumstances that we have, no single agency has the capacity to make a significant difference to the situation. Even the 45 billion being projected for the Presidential Committee on Northeast Initiative for 2017, assuming that the entire fund is given to PCNI, that is not even enough to make a significant difference. And I think it was also in realization of that, and that government in its wisdom also decided to invite the private sector to support. And that was the origin of the Victim Support Fund, which General Danjuma also heads, who also heads the Presidential Committee on Northeast Initiative. There is the dimension of the international community, because everybody needs to be on board. The international community also needs to be on board. Every Nigerian needs to be on board. So building partnership, building collaboration is critical to addressing this. So yes, while there are agencies that are addressing the immediate food security needs of the people, we cannot just live in today and forget about the challenges that lie ahead. Because if we keep living in today, if we keep living in the moment, keep living in addressing the short-term needs of the situation, we are going to continually work with the short term. So while agencies like the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, the state emergency management agencies involved are looking at the humanitarian component, trying to provide the food, while some of the UN agencies are also addressing the food components, while other international NGOs like the Red Cross are also looking at this. It's important that we do not all stay at this level, that some other elements are also looking at the medium to the longer term. And that is why, for example, in Victim Support Fund, while some agencies are focused on providing the immediate food needs of the people, we are also working to empower the people to return to agriculture.
All right, Sunday.
So that we can reduce this whole...
Yes, Sunday,
Yes.
let me interrupt you a little. We'll go on a break and then we come back. Stay with us on TVC Breakfast. Right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and on this segment we're discussing efforts by the federal government to rebuild the northeast in Nigeria that's been devastated by Boko Haram. And we have with us in the studio a public policy analyst and one-time presidential candidate in the 2007 election in Nigeria, Galtima Liman, with us in here. And we also have from our Abuja studio, Sunday Ochoche. He's the executive director of Victim Support Fund, rebuilding the northeast. Now, before we go ahead, gentlemen, let's go to my wall so we can have a better picture of what we are discussing in here. Okay. All right, this is just an area view of some of the areas in the northeast. Now, there is no one from Nigeria's northeast that has not, in one way or the other, been affected by Boko Haram insurgency. However, there is a hope for residents of the region going by the successes recently recorded by the Nigerian army in routing out the terrorists from their stronghold and decimating their population. Some internally displaced persons who have returned to their communities have stories to tell, and for others, life may never remain the same. Let's give you more background information into what we're talking about in here. Now, Nigeria's northeast has a land area of about 280,000 square kilometers, and that's about 33% of the landmass of Nigeria. Now, the region comprises of Borno State, Yobe State, Bauchi State, Gombe State, Adamawa State, and Taraba State. Now, this is what makes up the northeast of Nigeria. Now, if we move ahead, in the past, the Northeast was known for its commerce and trade with prominent local enterprises and well-established trade routes across the Sahara. Now, Galtima Liman gave us a picture, or was giving us a background as to what that was when they used to grow up. It was also known for its large agricultural potential, with about 80% of its population engaged in farming, contributing significantly to the regional and national GDP, making the zone a major contributor to national net food production. Now, Galtima, if we have to, let me ask you this. There were concerns that relief materials that were sent to the northeast one way or the other were not being disbursed the way it was supposed to. We hear of rebagging, we hear of diversion and all of that. If this rebuilding is going to take effect, what kind of checks and balances should be in place?
Certainly, as it was debunked by the governor, Shatima of Borno State. Clearly, yes, when you have destitution and you have desperation in that kind of place and you have resource being allocated, you need to have effective check and balance. You need to also have mechanism in place that ensures that those that are in need actually get this. Otherwise, if you have a lax administration or supervision, you end up seeing the kind of issue that you've reported. But I think it's been clearly brought to the front burner, especially when we saw the clash between the army and the police over some of those relief materials that were supposed to go to the IDPs, and they were fighting over them and all that. So I think that's an issue that is also germane, that has to be addressed. Otherwise, at the end of the day, whatever relief material that you provide for the needy end up going to the wrong places. So I think it's a very serious issue there. But beyond that, if you see the estimates that have been provided by your good selves, that's about $9 billion, and how do we get to solve this problem? My other colleague rightly mentioned that while we are dealing with the short term, let's also look at the medium term and the long term. Yes, the medium term, long term, these fall into developmental strategies. One important thing that I want us to understand is the Northeast. As you've seen of recent, there's discovery of oil and gas. There is a lot of international geopolitics also playing there around that area. Because if you look at the huge armaments, if you look at the huge guns, huge bullets that come to that through there are some machinery armies that are coming. So what is happening there is not only limited to the issue of the local, terrorist activities, the Yusufia sect and all that. There are certain things that are going on. And it's absolutely important that the government's attention is brought into this. If you look at the Adamawa, the Goza areas, you have uranium, you have diamond, you have a lot of, the Lake Chad itself, it's a very well-endowed oil and gas. And the oil and gas production is taking place in Niger, it's taking place quietly in Chad, it's taking place also in Cameroon. So it's important that these issues are also factored in. Which are the clandestine? Who are the sponsors? What kind of... today, nobody can understand the psychology, the ideology of the Boko Haram. It doesn't make sense. The only thing that people see are drones, minefields, and improvised, explosive devices. So there ought to be, and I'm sure the government, Buhari's administration is doing a lot on that, but deeper searchlight has to be put into that region. What is going on? Otherwise, we will end up throwing good money after a situation that nobody understands.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's bring Sunday in here now on the issue you raised about some kind of international dimension to this particular issue going on. And I remember that last year a report came out by Thomas Reuters saying the crisis going on in the northeast and by extension Lake Chad Basin is the most neglected crisis in terms of distribution of aid coming from the international communities. Your take on that, Sunday?
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you, Sunday, if you can hear us.
Sorry, I didn't quite... Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get you. Can you kindly repeat?
Our guest in the studio, Liman, said that the issue going on in the Northeast has some international dimension, that some interested actors are fueling the crisis going on there. And last year, Thomas Reuters came up with a report that says the crisis going on in the Northeast and by extension Lake Chad is the most neglected in terms of aid, in terms of humanitarian assistance coming from the international donors. We're trying to marry that together and hear what you have to say.
Thank you very much. There's no question that given the extent of globalization that the world is, there is very little that happens in any corner of the world that is limited or restricted to the issues in that part. And it is particularly so with conflict because there are so many dimensions to conflict. There's the military component, the weapons component, which is a very globalized business. And there's the ideological component. Ideologies fuel a lot of conflicts, a lot of insurgency. It tends to be very globalized. The movement of people, there are a lot of the mercenaries who fight in one place and just are looking for the next place to go and fight. So there's no question, whatever is happening in that direction with Boko Haram is not new. And it has been the general tendency with conflicts, around the world in the recent past. Boko Haram, there have been issues raised about some of their international partners. Boko Haram is believed to be closely, or at least was closely affiliated to Al-Shabaab in Somalia. We heard about that. How much of it actually existed then and the strength of that partnership, we didn't quite strongly establish. And I say this with all sense of responsibility because I had served in Somalia myself, in Mogadishu, and tried to find out when one served there, the actual relationship between Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram. My investigations then showed that it was a little bit weaker than the general impression we had about the strength of the linkages between Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram. But there are also questions about the linkages with ISIS, the linkages with Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb. So there are those dimensions. But there's no question that in terms of weaponry, we know that little weapons are manufactured in Nigeria, certainly not the quality of weapons that the insurgents are using. So the likelihood is that most of these weapons have come from outside the country. There are indications that many of the weapons are linked to the collapse of Libya as a state after the fall of Gaddafi. So those are elements that we need to seriously look at. Yeah. But there are also even confirmed indications by the military of the split within the Boko Haram between Shakao and El-Banawi. And we also know that one of those factions, the El-Banawi faction has been endorsed by ISIS. So those international components are areas that we expect our security agencies, and I believe they are, to look into more closely. What are the implications for the way and manner the internal insurgency is evolving, and how we will manage those?
All right,
Chad dimension, no question.
Okay.
The shrinking of Lake Chad, has definitely increased the international component of it.
All right, Sunday, let me put you on hold. We have just less than a minute to end the show, but I must ask Galtima this question just in less than a minute. State governments are doing so much. We hear even Borno State, they seem to be the worst hit, is doing so much. The governor of the state is doing so much to ameliorate the sufferings of the people. Now, in the structure of trying to rebuild the Northeast, what roles should state governments play? Because they are closest to the people. They understand the terrain. They understand the whole area.
The state governments can hardly even pay salaries. And that's why there is this hue and cry for outside intervention. I'm so happy that when President Trump, called the president in London, I'm talking about Muhammadu Buhari, I wish him speedy recovery. He said the crisis of Boko Haram, like my colleague, also confirmed, has international dimension, and he's ready and willing to partner with Nigeria to see how this issue. I think it's a golden opportunity for our leadership to look at those issues and see, while dealing with the military and the security aspect, also look at the element of, foreign assistance. Even though the world, as Trump again says, is going through a lot of crises. You have the Syrian crisis, you have so many other competing claims for the limited resources. But in spite of that, we should dwell a lot more on the foreign exchange elements, given the kind of magnitude.
The Lagos State government donated quite a lot of money, about 54 billion naira to
it's an excellent initiative, excellent, yes.
Good of Lagos State, so maybe other states
can do, but still, it's not adequate enough given the kind of crisis that we've seen.
All right, Galtima, Liman, thank you very much for coming on the program this morning. And Sunday Ucheche, thank you very much for coming as well. We wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, this is where we come to the end of today's edition of the program. Tomorrow, we'll be back again with other topics to discuss. Thank you very much and have a great day ahead. I am Mike Okwacha.
And I am Busolami Tunwashe. Bye for now.